I mean, we don't usually do it that way, but that's up to you.
No, it would be privilege of the floor, probably.
You would speak during privilege of the floor now.
Is that after the presentation?
Okay, it's 6:30. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If everyone would rise, if you're able to, and we'll for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Judy Drake. Lori Hemmings. Here. Christine Montag. Here. Joseph Wetmore. Ruth Groff.
Here. This evening we have a presentation from Steve Lawson regarding Parks, Recreation, and Trails. Steve, you could stand up to the speaker here.
Thank you. Let me get this opened up and turned on so everyone can see. All right, we have that one, Pat, but not the other one this time. We tested it before the meeting, it was opposite. That one didn't work. Oh, maybe it turned off. I do. There we go. All right. Thank you. Sorry, apologize for that delay. My name is Steve Lawson. I am the chair of the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Working Group. I live down in Ludloville. I've lived there since 1990. And Friday night we'll graduate our third and final child from Lansing High School. So we'll be an empty nester here. So the Trails Group has been hard at work on fulfilling the requests that were made in the Recreation Master Plan. Okay, and why is this not advancing? There we go. So the idea for trails in the town actually began back in the year 2000. I was one of the volunteers that did the initial recreation plan for the year 2000 planning. So I was one of the people in 1999 calling residents, asking them about Parks and Rec in the town and what things they wanted. And in that survey, trails came back as really kind of the main request. And we actually got a grant that we weren't able to use, but we received a grant in 2001, I think, for a multi-use trail that eventually wasn't able to be built, but it has continued to be a top priority for people in the town. In the 2018 comp plan, they did a survey, and that showed clearly that residents want more trails. One of the themes that the folks who put the plan together noted is that people wanted more trails that connected more things within the town, and then it also mentioned eventually they would like it to connect to things outside of the town. And then that came up again just a few years later in the 2022 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, where walking and biking trails were the #1 request for new recreational facilities that a household in Lansing would like to see. So it's been coming up since 2000, 2018, 2022. It seems to be a pretty consistent request. So why are people doing these greenways, and why are we talking about this? Our working group, we decided that the main thing we're trying to do is to strengthen the town of Lansing's commitment to being family-friendly, and being connected to each other. That's really what the trails tend to do. The reason that you've seen so many trails pop up in all the towns around Lansing is that they just have a lot of benefits. People just generally like them, but they have a lot of benefits, like they promote physical activity. It gets people to walk, to move, to get out of their cars. It is a much safer way to move around, especially on bikes. I read a lot of the research on biking, and biking for adults is a little bit dangerous on the road, but biking for children on the road is just incredibly dangerous. It's not really a great thing to do. So if we can get kids walking and biking off the road, we've done a great service to improving the safety of the kids in Lansing. There's a bunch of environmental benefits, one of them being that we just get people out to enjoy and appreciate the nature that we have, the beautiful town that we have. And then the social benefits, just connecting people. I know one of my best friends has a dog, and our usual meeting place is right over there at the Lansing Center Trails, where we walk his dog and we chat, and it's one of our main ways to stay connected. And the more things we can do to give people chances to do things like that, to be connected, to run into people that they haven't seen in a while, anything we can do that improves that connection within the town, I think is well worth doing. And then accessibility to the outdoors in terms of just making sure that everyone gets a chance. You don't need money in your pocket, you don't need gas in your car to go out and take a walk on a trail. It's just a very equitable way to get people out into the beautiful surrounds that we have here. And it doesn't want to advance. There we go. Okay, what types of trails are we talking about here? So everyone's probably familiar with the trails at the town center trails and at Salt Point. Those are nature trails, and what we want to do is create multi-use trails. So think of using a multi-use trail to move around the town and get to these parks and these nature trails. So a multi-use trail, think of the trail that's in Dryden, the rail trail there. That connects, I've walked it from Agway to the lake out there. The trail in Ithaca that goes from Stewart Park to Cass Park, that's a multi-use trail. The multi-use trails are usually paved, either stone dust or asphalt, and they're most often off-road. And again, that's part of the safety and the enjoyment of nature. Where these multi-use trails need to, they can go alongside road right-of-ways, where you can have separated bike lanes, pedestrian walks. So what we're talking about doing is creating multi-use trails. The working group's hope is to, as much as possible, go off-road, get away from the road, but where needed, we may have to do something similar to what you see at Geneva. If you want a good example of what walking and biking trails look like alongside a state highway, they just did a beautiful project in Geneva that then connects up into the town. So that's what we're talking about here, is multi-use trails. Trail design. So what types of uses will be allowed on the trail? Basically, any non-motorized use. So walking, biking, walking your dog, could be skiing in the winter. We'll have to eventually figure out what kind of e-bikes can and can't be on the trail. That'll be for a later date. But basically, if it's a non-motorized use, it'll be allowed on the trail. And the trail design, they're typically about 10 feet wide, either of asphalt or stone dust, and then they have mowed shoulders, typically a couple of feet. If you've walked the town center trails, I think it's an 8-foot wide grass strip that's mowed closely, and then they have 2-foot shoulders. So just picture it a little bit wider than what's over there, and picture it being stone dust or asphalt. And one of the things that separates a multi-use trail from a nature trail is that these trails are usually built with federal funding, and with federal funding it needs to meet the Americans with Disabilities Act. So this will be accessible. Whatever surfacing type we do will meet the ADA. It will be necessary for us to cross roads in several locations, state highways here and there, and town and county roads. I think the main thing to know is that every road crossing will be designed by an engineer and approved by the state or the county or the town. Ruth and I have already met with state DOT and talked about the existing crossing we have right behind me and a potential one that we might need in the future. And what they basically said is if you take a look at the crossing signal that's down by the middle school, the new one that was put in when they finished the bridge, that's very similar to what they're recommending now for road crossings. So the DOT has already started to help us out on that. Funding. How are we going to build, how are we going to fund the construction of the trail? With grants, and more grants. There will have to be town funds dedicated to this, whether it's for legal fees or in-kind services or who knows what. That will inevitably happen, but our goal as a working group is to go after every grant that we can and go after grants that can match other grants, which is very possible. You just have to know which ones, what the matches are and what funds can be used to create the match. We're working right now and creating a funding plan that goes through that, and we're talking to the different folks that administer these different grants and trying to get a good sense of what can be used where, how much it can be, what the match is, what can be used to cover the match. So we'll be putting together a plan to try to get the trail as much as possible done with outside funding. Easements and maintenance. The trail will be built on public and private land. Public examples would be across the street, the trails that we have there, any trail that loops the ball fields area here. If the trail goes down towards the school and we would use Lansing school property to support the trail. And to get from public land to public land, we will be seeking landowners who are willing to give up, for example, a 20-foot wide strip to create an easement for the trail to pass through. So it will be a combination of public and private, and it's just something that our Trails Working Group will have to be working on, talking to folks, telling them what we're trying to do in the town, trying to get people to support it, and seeing if folks are willing to give us a 20-foot wide strip so we can get from here to there. And that'll be an ongoing effort of the group for years to come. And in terms of maintaining the trail, you can really think of the trail as a new town park. Instead of a big piece of land all in one spot, it's just it's a park that's a linear park. So think of it as a park. It'll be maintained as any other park. And Pat has already looked into maintenance costs from other folks that have trails nearby, so he's got a good handle on what we'll be getting into. Now, where will the trail go? We're really working off the plan, the map that's in the 2022 Recreation Master Plan. And the idea is that the trail will connect the major hubs of community life in Lansing. So if you can picture a trail starting here at the town center, and then the trail will make its way down to the Lansing Central Schools. From the schools, you could then make your way down to Myers Park and Salt Point. And those are kind of the major hubs of community and definitely family-oriented life in Lansing. So Myers Park up to the schools up to town center. And then from town center, we would like to go towards the village. So for example, the trail could head towards the rink, which is and the soccer fields behind that, which is the major hub of recreation for kids and families. And then from the rink, we'd like to make our way down even further towards the village where we can connect to the village trail system, the goal being to make it possible for kids to get to the YMCA on the trail. So YMCA to rink to town center to schools, down to Myers. Pretty closely aligned with what is in the 22 rec plan. And then as the trail makes these main connections, we'll do little feeder trails that pick up kids and families from the different neighborhoods that are along the trail's path to give as many people as possible safe access right to the trail. The trail routes will have to be developed over time. This is a map that a Cornell student group did a project for us. And what they did is they went through and looked at plot plans, and they came up with 3 or 4 different possible ways to get from here to there. So work like that will be ongoing. We'll have to identify many different routes and talk to many different landowners and eventually to be able to put the trail together. The initial phase of the Greenway, we would like that to be right here in the town center. We have the town land here at the ball fields, we have the land across the street, so we'd like to connect from, if you can imagine kids being at the town barn fields, we'd like them to be able to cross towards Scoops, and then the trail would continue to the parking lot for the town center trail. You could then connect over to Bement Drive, where you could get to the apartment complex, to the brewery. It would then continue on, line up with this crosswalk right here that comes to the library. And then from there, we're fulfilling the plan that's in the Recreation Master Plan for the town barn fields, where you can see there's a loop walkway around the fields. And then from this loop, you can have a spur going to Woods Edge and a spur going to any of the businesses, whether it's golf or pizza or whatever it might be. So our Phase 1 project, we would like to have it be right here in the town center. And then from town center, we'll take off in all the different directions. So the next steps, our working group is going to be doing outreach. We're beginning the outreach tonight by presenting to the board where we're at and what we'd like to be working on. We're working on a brochure and a video, a drone video that actually flies the proposed route of the trail. We're working on the funding plan, and we will continue just doing route planning to try to figure out different ways to get from here to there. In terms of the Phase 1 trail, we'd like to go after that project fairly quickly if we can. There's 3 things that the county tells us we need in order to be able to have that project be fundable. The first is that it has to be aligned with the comp plan and the recreation master plan, which we're all set there. We have to have ownership or easement agreements in place. We have 2 of the 3 easement agreements all in place, and we'll be working on the 3rd very soon. And the main thing that they want us to do in order to finish being grant ready for the town center portion of the Greenway is to do a feasibility study, which is basically a very detailed cost estimate. So, and the way that you do that is the Tompkins County Tourism grants are available. It's a zero match planning grant. So we can hire a consultant to look at the details of the Phase 1 Greenway, do a very detailed cost estimate, and then with that, we have the 3 pieces in place that we need to be able to go after federal funding or state funding for the first phase of the Greenway that connects the town center. After that's in place, we would hope to be back to you within a month or 2 or 3 and request approval to apply for another grant, which will be a comprehensive trail plan that the planning department has asked us to add to what we want to do. They would really like to see the planning be at that level. So we'd like to request approval to apply for this first zero match grant now, and we'll be back in a couple months asking for the ability to apply for a second grant for a comprehensive trail plan. And there's all the folks on the committee that have been meeting every other week for about 1.5 years to pull this all together. So with that, I'll entertain any questions or step aside and let you continue on.
Thank you, Steve. Very good presentation.
All right. Thank you very much.
You guys have any questions?
Okay.
So the next thing on our agenda, The next thing on our agenda then is a motion authorizing the Town of Lansing supervisor to sign a grant application for a feasibility study for the trails, which you just talked about. So do I have a motion to?
So moved.
I'll second.
Sorry,
I'll second.
I keep forgetting.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
All right. Our second session, Pat, is our gentleman on the line.
Working on it.
Okay. Our second session is really more of a discussion for the town board. We're looking at different options to update the HVAC system in this building, which is not in good shape, to say the least. So we were given an analysis by the county of a lot of different options, So we will be having a discussion with one of the engineers for the town board's benefit so we can understand better what our different options are.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yes. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Patrick?
You might have to speak up quite a bit.
Can you hear us?
Yep, you're good to go, George.
Before I get started, were there any particular questions that you wanted to go over, or did you just want sort of an overview of the report, or what are the vision to this?
Probably an overview at first would help.
Okay. Okay, I think I can try to share my screen, looks like it. Let's get started. Can you see
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
my screen? Okay. So this report is really kind of two different parts. The first part is really all about a whole slew of different kinds of funding sources for different energy efficiency improvement projects. I don't want to spend too much time on that because unless you have specific questions, they're pretty self-explanatory. Each one of these real-line texts is a link to a lot of information about them. And I would say that these are all the incentives that we think you might qualify for. None of this is a guarantee, and these programs are changing all the time. So at the time we actually started moving forward with the project, it's definitely worth exploring this, but there may be some programs that have changed rules or that are closed down that may not still be applicable. So I'd like to just kind of skip this section unless you have any particular questions about it.
No, I think we were most concerned about the specific options that we had, trying to understand them.
So yeah, that's the second half of the report, and that's really geared to yours town hall. So this, I don't know how big this is on your screen, but this table really has the meat and potatoes of the report. So this is every sort of different scenario that we looked into, and what its impacts are in terms of CO2 emission reductions, electric consumption reductions or increases, peak demand, electrical demand reductions or increases, and then natural gas use reductions or increases. We've monetized that, so savings are just straight up. If you save this many kilowatt hours and this much in peak demand, you save this many dollars per year. These greenhouse gas or GHG savings, these are based on the CO2 estimates of the CO2 emissions reductions. And we've started putting these into reports because it can help sway funders. If you have a project that you want to do, but economically it just doesn't meet somebody's threshold of a payback period, if they're interested in greenhouse gas emissions reductions, this might fit the scale. So we've included that just as another tool for you if it becomes useful. And this is based on the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation published a report called Establishing a Value of Carbon. And in that report, one average number is $120 per metric ton. So in case you're wondering where that comes from, it's from that report. And I think New York State has adopted that value as a basis for their calculations. So So those are the savings, and then project costs is our estimate of how much each of these measures would cost to implement. Payback is just the total project cost divided by the annual savings, and this in the first column is just the actual money savings, and the second column it's the money savings and the social cost of carbon savings. So those are the numbers that folks are often using to determine whether this makes sense or not from an economic standpoint. So as you can see, like a lot of these are very long paybacks, but when you include the social cost of carbon, those paybacks reduce. So just another tool to help you if you're looking for funding sources and they recognize this value. So going through each of these items, I tried to kind of, the ones that we recommend looking into are in black, and then the ones that we looked at but aren't probably the highest priority are in a lighter gray color. So this first energy conservation measure, number one, is replacing the control system. So this, the value of this is really to tell you how much extra you're spending per year by having a heating system that only heats half the building, a cooling system that only cools half the building, and in effect, using space heaters, electric space heaters, is a somewhat expensive way to make up for a heating system that isn't working all the way. But I don't know if you can see this number on my screen or the report, it's really only comes out to about $85 per year extra that you're spending by not having a heating system that works totally. So I was a little bit surprised by that. I expected that number to be higher. I think part of that is you're probably not heating the whole building to 72 degrees with those space heaters. So I think that may be part of it. And also, by not cooling adequately half of the building, you're using less energy. So if you're with a heating and cooling system so that they effectively heating and cooling the whole building, you would save some because you'd be burning gas instead of using electric space heaters, but you'd probably spend a little bit extra on cooling the entire building. And so the balance there is only about $85 per year. So that's a good number. You're not going to make up any budget shortfalls here with that. So I really want to give you an idea of what those savings are. As far as the cost, I have no idea. I mean, it may be something very simple. It may be something very complex and expensive. And it sounds like you had some quotes to just basically replace the entire control system. That's relatively expensive. But that's probably what any contractor is going to be willing to do rather than inheriting a system that may be full of problems. So I did put our cost there, but based on those total savings, don't expect much of a payback. So that's what the big takeaway here. It's probably worth doing just from a comfort standpoint and pain in the butt standpoint, but it's not going to save you a lot of cash. So that was interesting and I think important result. The second ECM, there's really kind of three ECM 2A, 2B, and 2C are all different options for the same kind of thing, which is replacing part of all of your heating and cooling system with a heat pump system. And these, really the biggest benefits of these is a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. You can see up to 50%. But there's also pretty significant cost savings for each of these. $400 if you just replace your AC system with a heat pump system, an air source heat pump system, then it would still provide cooling, but it would also provide some additional heating. Not only the heating that you need, but some additional heating for the winter, primarily for spring and fall. And there's some significant cost savings there. Replacing up to the lowest temperatures that we experience here in central New York. That comes with a higher price tag, about $30,000. Let's say about double the cost. But it does have a higher savings, about 50% higher savings. So an interesting takeaway here is that you can really save a lot of energy use and annual expenses doing a partial system. So that's this ECM2A is kind of a partial system. You're still using the boiler, still using gas, but you use this heat pump system to kind of be your primary heating system, and the boiler and the heating heat would just kick in to back that up when it gets really cold out. And then the last option was replacing the AC and boiler system with a ground source heat pump. The advantage here is that it could potentially tie into the unit boiler system, but it comes with a pretty high price tag, and the cost savings aren't enough to justify that increase in price. So our recommendation actually was this 2B, replacing the AC and boiler system with a system that can heat down to the lowest temperatures that we experience here. And the reason for that, even though it has almost double the price, and it's only a 50% higher savings, is that there are a lot of incentives that this type of system would likely qualify for. Whereas a partial system, the utility incentives and a lot of the NYSERDA incentives have started to kind of taper away from that partial option. So this partial option A actually not qualify for any incentives, and this full on everything heated with heat pump option will. So I think it's getting some quotes and talking to contractors about different options and kind of putting everything on the table. But it's my expectation that this full, heat everything with the heat pump option actually may be the same cost or close to the same cost as the partial option. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. And take these project cost numbers with a grain of salt. Costs are kind of all over the place. I mean, as a government entity, I'm sure you're going to multiple bids, but you might see a lot of variation in those bids. But I think this is a good sort of order of magnitude to give you sort of frame of reference. And also just bear in mind that these are not including any additional incentives or depreciation or anything like that. These are just raw cost numbers. So the third measure that we looked into was replacing or repairing the energy recovery ventilator system. So you do have a ventilation system that exhausts air out in the building and brings in fresh air into the building, and it exchanges heat between those two. So, in the depths of winter, you're not exhausting all that hot air, breathing in free air. You're sort of reclaiming some of that heat that you're exhausting out. But the system isn't working, and I think this is really tied into that whole control system thing. I think that whatever happened with the last HVAC company, last year, or maybe it was the year before, they just turned it off. It may be simple thing, but one of the major reasons that it was turned off. So I think looking into that, or just replacing it outright, I assume replacing it outright and, using the existing ductwork, which is kind of replacing the module itself. There are some cost savings associated with that. And basically without that ERD, you're really just letting natural infiltration, exfiltration, and like bathroom exhaust fans. You're letting those kind of be your ventilation strategy. So you're not taking advantage of the heat exchange that this ERD would have. So if you did install that and had a more balanced pressure throughout the building, that can help reduce draftiness and also help provide more pressure throughout the building, not just in certain localized areas. And probably save some costs. Again, we're over $100 a year, so nothing in here is a huge cost savings. annual gas usage. The savings are also very low with either each of these options. So this is really, if you want, if the energy you have now, think believe that it's time to replace it, and you want to electrify, probably the best course of action is to install heat pump water heater. It is the highest cost up front, about $6,400 up front, but it actually will save some operating costs. So it actually does. It doesn't feel like an offside in 4 years. So that's a good option. It has one minor benefit that can help sort of dehumidify basements because it's pulling heat out of the basement. So that's how we can dehumidify space a little bit. There are other options. You could just install a simple electric tank water heater, electric resistance water heater. That would cost an extra $300 per year to operate over your gas fire unit. So I don't recommend that. For a sort of in the middle option, one of these water heaters is actually a really good option for just like hand washing, bathroom sink kind of usage, and maybe some like dishwashing in the kitchen sinks. They're just like kind of like little mini electric tanks, and they install there in the bathroom, kind of right in the sinks. And those, they're pretty expensive, they're pretty easy to install. They're about, you would spend more money on hot water usage with those, but they represent a pretty good option if you want to electrify. They also have the benefit of, pretty quick hot water because they're right at point of use. So you don't need a recirculation system or anything like that. So one of the examples there, these are all really low priority and things to consider even when that existing water heater is out of its life. And I think you're okay with that still. And then the last one, this is a very straightforward one that honestly, if you notice, this has some of the highest cost savings. It's just replacing those glass and rice with LEDs. You could do it right now, and it would pay off in about 15 years in cost savings. Or you do it as the existing ballasts and the report tubes burn out. They do sell LED tubes that replace the TA fluorescence. If they sell these you can just swap the fluorescent bulb out and put the LED tube in, and you don't need to replace all the roots or ballasts. Those tubes don't last as long, so that they don't have as long of a lifespan, but it can be a good, sort of entry option. But I put this out there, LED technologies come a long way. There's a lot of options. Bulbs are relatively inexpensive, fixtures are relatively inexpensive. You don't need to do a full light retrofit, but as that has to now with play, considering okay, let's just replace either this fixture or these tubes with LED tubes or LED fixture. So that's really the need of this report. The subsequent pages give a little bit more detail about what we're talking about when we're looking at each of these measures. I'm sure it's not enough detail to answer all your questions, but this is where we're trying to kind of explain what each of those line items means. So I think this might be a good opportunity if you have any particular questions about any one of these or about kind of table overall.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
I would
Okay. For you were talking about the partial electrification and that it could possibly be used as the main heat source also, or did I miss here? Okay. And so, but since it's showing as a lower cost than replacing both the AC and the boiler with the air source heat pump, is it a smaller unit that's envisioned?
Yeah, so basically, in the low capacity system, and essentially, I expect that your existing ductwork is not adequate to handle a system that would be able to provide as much heat as you need at, -5 degrees outside temperature. So the additional cost with the ECM2B, which is replace everything with an air source heat pump, it includes some cost for either expanded ductwork or like wall-mounted or floor-mounted split units. So I don't know if you've seen those around or if you have some at your house, but like a main split type thing that would tie into the system. So what I expect a contractor or an engineer, if you went the design route, would come up with is use as much of that ductwork as possible, but supplement with, especially probably in that courtroom, with wall-mounted or floor-mounted splits. And so that's additional cost for that. This 2A, I would still definitely recommend a cold climate heat pump if you're going to replace the AC system with a partial capacity heat pump. So you still have the full cooling capacity that you need for the summertime. And then you provide a lot of the heat that you need down to the coldest temperatures that we would see. It's just going to provide all of it. So if you could use it as a primary system that the thermostat is set to whatever temperature you want. And then once it starts to lose capacity, the boiler can provide the supplemental heat to keep the space warm and not get too cold when it's really cold out. And that, the reason that the savings there are pretty close to the full capacity system is that most of the year we're not at 0 or -5 degrees. Most of the year we're hovering between 20, most of the winter we're hovering between 20 and 40 degrees. And I expect that a partial system would be able to provide pretty much everything you need in that temperature range, that 20 to 40 degree temperature range. So when you get below that, and when you're below that temperature, nobody's in the courthouse usually, and that's nighttime. So that helps further if the nighttime temperature requirements are a little bit lower. So yes, to answer your question, the partial system could be your primary heating system, and the boiler could be the backup. And that still may qualify you for incentives. They're starting to whittle that down. I think they're trying to wean us off of these partial systems and really incentivize full heating capacity systems. But I think that there still are, clean heat does still allow for that. And by the time you're doing this, that may still be the case. So I think it's definitely an option to keep on the table and to see what, when you get down to the level of a detailed design, whether it be through an engineering company or a contractor, I think it's worth keeping that option on the table.
Okay, just one more. So can they add the heat pump water heater after the fact when the water heater dies?
Yes.
If you have the air source heat pump already installed?
Yes, it's a completely separate system. There are some expensive and complicated systems that could integrate heating and cooling and domestic hot water, but it's definitely not the way to go. I would keep those systems separate. It's very simple, and the heat pump water that I estimated the cost on was really just like called hybrid water, so it's a tank with a heat pump on top of it. It's taking heat out from the basement, so really into a cooler basement. But it's really just a self-contained unit. You only need is a 20 amp, 240 volt circuit run for it, and it goes in place of your existing water heater, everything pump comes out the same. If you wanted to go to a higher efficiency, a much more expensive route, they do have a CO2 lubricant system with a tank inside, and then the heat pump unit is outside, and it's got a little fan in it. There's actually water lines that run between inside and outside. And that, if you really want to use these, that's another option. Has the benefit of being a little more efficient, and it also doesn't steal heat from inside the building, but it's like double cost at least.
Okay.
And typically, it's not really, and fewer contractors have experience with that. And it has another benefit of running water outside, so you have some kind of clever leak protection system set up. So in this case, what I would recommend is that hybrid system, and it is just a direct replacement, essentially.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question. You had mentioned that replacing the control system and replacing the ERV system, the air exchange, should be done together. If we do, for example, the AC boiler with the air source heat pump, would we have to do those two projects in addition, or are they included, the work of them is included in replacing the air conditioner and boiler with the air source heat pump?
If you replace the AC and boiler with the heat pump, it's a new control system, that's part of it, and you don't need to worry about it anymore. If you wanted to use option 2A, is like the partial system, where you use the boiler as backup, you could probably die without it. But it might be worth at least looking into the control system for the radiant heating system.
Right. And the air exchange system, would we have to do that in addition to the AC and boiler?
You wouldn't have to do it, but if you were doing a full system replacement, very likely an engineer would want to consider that as well and sort of integrate it into the system. So it can and is a standalone system, so you could do that later or earlier. But if you were getting a full engineering design done, I'd be shocked if they could consider ventilation and kind of just handle it at the same time.
Okay. And is that in your current estimate of project cost? I know you said there are a lot of variables, but is that included or not?
If it's not included, you could, again, take these numbers with a grain of salt. I am always surprised when it comes to shuttle and we get actual estimates and they blow my estimates out of water. But I feel reasonably confident that you can add another 9 or 10 grand to this and then consider that as the sort of an estimate for total cost. But this really depends on an awful lot of factors, and I would think this is the best case. Like there's not a lot of that group that needs to be replaced or redone, and they can route ductless water split units pretty easily throughout the building without too much difficulty. The big cost here, the big driver for cost increases is labor, and ductwork is one of those that can really add a lot of time if there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So I can't tell you that that is or is not the case. That's going to need to come from a contractor and or engineer doing a detailed design.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question about the difference between air source and ground source. There's quite a big difference in the price, but is there a difference in, say, the life of either one of those, or what would be the advantage of one over the other?
What was that last question?
What would be the advantage of one over the other between air source and ground source?
So the big advantage for the ground source system over the air source, as you can see right here, the cost savings. We're talking about $700 per year for a ground source system and $600 per year for an air source system. So it's somewhat more Basically, both of these refer to where heat is being extracted from to be sort of upgraded and provided into the building. So an air source system uses the outside air to extract heat. Even at low temperatures, there's still plenty of heat in the air, and the refrigeration system basically absorbs that heat and increases its temperature and dumps it into the building at a temperature that's usable for us. A ground source system, so essentially the bigger the difference between the outside air temperature and the inside air temperature, the harder the system has to work, and the less efficient it is, and the lower capacity it has. So that's why as the outside temperature drops, the building loses more heat, so you need more heat, and at the same time the heat pump loses capacity. So that's where there's some balance point, and modern heat pumps are typically designed to about 0 degree balance point, maybe -5, somewhere in that range for our climate, to where the amount of heat the heat pump can output is equal to the amount of heat that you need. A ground source heat pump uses, wells or ground, or they could use they could tear up a bunch of land and install a bunch of tubing horizontally and bury it with dirt. So basically, the ground source heat pump takes advantage of the more stable and higher generating temperatures of the deep earth, not super deep earth, but like 10 feet down to 100 feet, or in the case of wells, 500 feet. So that temperature is a lot closer to about 50 degrees year-round. So the ground source heat pump doesn't have to work as hard in the depths of winter to provide you with heat because the ground isn't as cold as the air is. And then also in the summertime, it doesn't have to work as hard because the ground is much cooler than the outside air is. So for our climate, the big thing really comes from heating. Cooling use is not the predominant use, but it's still an effect. So the advantage is efficiency and cost savings. Ground source heat pumps do tend to last longer. NYSERDA expects, from a financial standpoint, ground source systems to last about 25 years, whereas air source systems only 15. So there's a big advantage where another advantage is refrigerant loss. Ground source systems, the refrigerant system is all factory sealed and brazed. The air source systems are the fuel connections that need to be made. There's usually a lot more refrigerant in an air source system, so the leakage rate on average for air source systems is higher than ground source systems. So those are the main benefits. The only drawback for a ground source system or chemistry. The first one is cost. They're a lot more expensive, and that's really because the equipment is a little bit more expensive, but really it's just the drilling of wells is an expensive endeavor. It's typically about $10,000 to $12,000 per well, and for a regular system you probably need 3 to 5. So it really starts to stack up. And then as a result of that, because of the high costs, there's been less development work on ground source heat pumps. So air source heat pumps are really, that's what is mostly used. And so you put a lot of development into it, and there's a lot more options. So you can do things like, you can install air handler in, you can have wall-mounted units, and you can have floor-mounted units. You have all these different ways to kind of customize them to fit your building. Those ground source systems are typically limited to either an air handler, which uses ductwork, or a hydronic system that uses like your radiant flow system. The downside of the hydronic system is that cooling is not easily done with that hydronic system. You would have to have wall-mounted units that use the cool water from the heat pump, that will make that building. They just don't have cooling. Cooling the slab is usually not going to provide enough cooling capacity, and it's probably going to cause a lot of condensation and like mildew of your carpet and stuff like that. So that's a lot of information, but the big disadvantage of the ground source system is the cost and the slightly less flexible installation options.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question? Guy? Debbie? Ed? Thank you. Thank you, George. We really appreciate it. This has been extremely helpful.
Good. And if you don't get any other questions that pop up, feel free to send me an email. I'd be happy to touch base on them again.
Okay, thank you.
It's a lot of information.
Thank you. We will do that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good luck to you.
All right. Our next discussion is regarding our highway barn with Colliers Engineering. Scott Bova. And team, I should say.
Yes. Dream team.
I'm sorry. Yep.
Just hit the buttons? Yes. Okay. Sure, I got it right over. Oh, baseball. Thank you.
You have the slides are in the packet, starting on page 17.
Right, you all have copies, correct? Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for having us tonight. We definitely wanted to take this opportunity to update you on the project, but before we will go forward into the project, well, we have an agenda here. Quickly, we'll do quick introductions here. We'll also go over the project background, how we got here, and the work that was done in advance of this progress we're presenting tonight. The scope of the project is where we are currently. This is at a schematic design level. We'll also be presenting to you a market analysis. We'll highlight the costs and some of the construction-related items. And lastly, we'll go through a cost summary, and we'll also provide you some ideas about or opinions to what items could be value engineered potentially. So as a quick introduction, I'm Scott Bova. I am a principal with Colliers Engineering Design, formerly Bergman. You've probably seen our contracts were Bergman, but we're currently operating as Colliers Engineering and Design. I am a principal in the government practice. I'm here tonight with our extender, also with Colliers. He is our senior project manager. And with Chase is Laird Updike, and Lee Stepp has joined us today as well. So we thought we'd start by sharing a few photos of the existing conditions, just to give you a little context and idea about what the state of the current facility is in the site. The first side here is a front elevation from the road, from the access road, highlighting the main garage area. And in the background there, you'll see what is currently utilized as cold storage. That's a little L addition that was built on the garage some years ago. By the way, the original building, I believe, is 1960, 61. Does that sound about right? So it's almost 64, 65 years old, right? Yeah. Early 60? Okay. The little addition of the back is, again, it's the cold storage. You can see the photovoltaic panels on top that were added more recently. But the building is generally, it's basically run its life for sure. We see a lot of these facilities across the state. They were built, for much smaller vehicles, far less storage than they currently store. Garages today typically have a component with also a maintenance feature. This also includes a maintenance garage inclusive of this facility. There's also an admin wing that you don't see in this photo, but is to the west of this building, or this part of the building here. Again, very undersized for current facilities, and we've seen a lot of these facilities where they're not only undersized, but they're very unsafe. So we usually come in here, look at these facilities and help and assess these facilities for many of our towns and villages that we serve as an opportunity to talk about, their options. A couple more slides here real quick. This is your existing fuel station. This is both diesel and gas. This is uncovered, and it's generally in an open area. It's fairly undersized for your current facility. I believe many other departments are also utilizing this fuel station for their fuel needs as well. So they come to this site to do that business. Here's a representative scene of kind of how we cram all our equipment. Your trucks are probably costing you in excess of $300,000 now, or close to it, right, Mikey? Yeah. These garages are actually housing your equipment and preserving your equipment so they last longer. But you can see a lot of the conditions, how these vehicles have to be parked. Sometimes they're, again, unsafe conditions, or vehicles have not gotten smaller over the years either. So when you couple all these problems, you have lots of challenges with these spaces. I'll jump real quick into our study. Bergman was retained back in 2020, 2021. We produced a feasibility study. Actually, it was an assessment of your existing conditions plus a feasibility study. That feasibility study included investigation of your site and your buildings. And the first concept scheme, actually there were several concept schemes prepared. This happens to be the chosen scheme. This is one of 3 schemes, I believe, that were produced for this site. This is reflective of a site that removed the L-shaped addition in the rear. That building you see on the left-hand side is the existing garage. It also removed the admin office area to the west, opened up the site for a new fuel station and ability to circulate on that site. And everything to the east, everything from the midpoint for the east, is basically all new development. And in that area, we've essentially removed or relocated the salt storage, fabric-covered salt storage barn, and built, and shown here, reflected a new building, a new pre-engineered metal building, where your salt barn currently consists in your yard space. This space is a little bit higher in ground level, so there are some challenges here with the sites and the grading. But this solution combated most of that by, again, with a green area between the building, providing the parking to the side in this scheme. And basically your garage space runs parallel to the main space. Your office area is near the front, and your maintenance area is adjacent to that. So this was our taking off point. We produced an estimate at that level. This is a concept design that was inclusive with the report we provided, I believe, the end of 2021. And in that, we also provided a estimate of those services back in 2021. Okay, so this is a little bit of an evolution of that concept. This is our latest site plan development with grades. In this scheme, you can see, again, the existing building to the left, to the west, and the new barn to the right, the east. But we essentially consolidated a few spaces, changed the orientation to the entrance for the admin wing and the entrance. We still have the same characteristics of the garage portion being parallel to the road, so you could drive through. That's a drive-through facility, one way in, one way out, not multiple doors that go up and let your heat out. So that's still a very efficient system. And we, again, employed the same pre-engineered metal building strategies on this site, along with a salt barn off to the east there. So you can see it's a fairly packed site. I mean, we're putting a lot of structure, and we're making a lot of improvements, including a very large, and you look in the northwest corner there, that is the retention. That's the water management system. All your water will flow to this area and be retained on your site. So that's where that water is managed. And immediately behind the building is yard space. So we see an area behind the building. By the way, that whole area should be secured and fenced. So you have a very secured setting and a very open and easy access and easy exit, very good sight lines, so a very safe building, a safe site. And you can see we've touched everything. We've touched every part of that site, if you will. Okay, and then one more slide I'll just give you real quick here. This is an estimate we produced at the end of 2021. We did actually 3 estimates for all 3 schemes. This is a little hard for me to read, so I might grab my big copy here. Scenario 2 was the preferred scheme, and in that scheme, that was a 47,000 square foot facility. And we had produced, again, estimates both construction as well as soft costs. So here you have project costs. And scenario 2 being, actually it was the largest building scheme, it affected most of the site. With soft costs, we were estimating this project at 13 million and change, just over 13 million. By the time you add in fees and our engineering fees, we're probably a little over 14. I believe you bonded 15 for the project, if I recall. So there's very little room in that number for contingency. And again, contingencies, as we explained to you formally previously, those are the numbers that you want to carry in a project to protect your budget. Those are unknowns. Those are things that we haven't designed yet. Those are elements that come up when you dig in the ground and you find soft soils or contamination. So it's important that you carry a fair amount of both design and construction contingency when you're estimating, really, again, to protect your budget. If we don't have to use them, great, but as the project goes on, those contingencies will be reduced. We're currently operating with our estimates, I think, at a 10% design contingency and a 10% construction contingency because we're early in the process. Okay, so those numbers start adding up fairly quickly. But those we thought, and LaChase had indicated in their estimates that you'll see here shortly, to carry those along with escalation. Escalation wasn't reflected in numbers previously either. That's the cost of what labor and construction can change from year to year. And typically we carry somewhere in the 5 to 6% range annually. So every year you wait to construct, you can anticipate an increase of 5 to 6%. That's on top of the contingency. So here we are, we're 3.5 years later almost now from our initial study and our initial estimates. So I'm going to hand this over to Larry very quickly. He'll go over some of the construction costs as they are reflective of modern day.
Scott, really quick, if you, sorry to interrupt you, but if you go back to the schematic site plan.
Sure.
I'd just like to touch on, just briefly, we're also working around, I'm sorry, we're also working around, I don't know where to point, but if I walk over here, the board will see me, but right here is the nice egg model. Okay? So we're working around making sure they have access in here. This is town land being leased, correct? Okay. By NICEAG. So we have to keep a 20-foot, 15-foot or 20-foot easement roadway back in. We're obligated to that. So the grade, the swale, and everything else with this project, we have to keep this in mind, which is challenging as well. But you see that spot there. What is that? It could be used for something, but
It's not usable for the project.
no,
Right,
it
right,
is not.
Right. And actually, just to add on what Mikey just said, not only that, a road that's basically established as an easement, because of the grades there and the challenges of the grades to accomplish that access road, very difficult to read probably in the site plan, but it looks like that line, that curved line looks a little bit darker. That's a double line. That's actually a wall. That's a retaining wall to hold back earth so that we can actually provide our access road, or our roads, our drive areas, and preserve their road area. So again, it's a pretty extreme amount of business going on in a very small, compact site. Okay, now,
Thank you.
thank you, Mikey. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Board. So LaChase was appointed by the town.
Can you make sure you talk into the
sure.
mic so the
Yep.
people at home can hear you?
Certainly.
Thank you.
LaChase was appointed by the board as a construction manager for this project just after the new year, and we've been working with Colliers and the board, and the committee, looking at this project, looking at phasing, looking at potential costs. We've performed an estimate on the schematic drawings that have been produced thus far, which are in an early stage. They're not complete, so there's a lot of narratives and assumptions that our team has to make to understand what the final intent is of what the plan and the documents and specifications will be on bid day when we put this to the public, to a public vote. Excuse me, not a public vote, a public bid, and understand the true cost of this project. What we have here is on the screen that we've shown is it's a market analysis that LaChase does across all of our business sectors. We operate in several states, primarily in New York State, and what we do is we gather this information because LaChase is also a general contractor. We have self-perform work that we deliver across all of our areas, all of our regions. And that information helps us contribute to teams like our team, which is a construction management-based professional service. And it helps us inform you, the town, as to what to expect and what the market is telling us. So what we are showing here is we have in the time scale, we have 2020 on the left-hand side of the left graphic there with the United States map. So 2020 is the first vertical bar, then 2021, 2022, up to 2024. And you can see the cost of construction from 2021, right about here, to where we are now, just into 2024, has increased in the Northeast about 40%. So that's your cost of materials and your cost of labor. In that time frame, we all saw it over COVID. Everybody saw the lumber prices skyrocket almost 400%. So those type of things we've seen. And then we've seen the price of lumber come back down, right? So we've all seen that ourselves. And what we akin some of these market analysis to is if we take it into our personal life, that we all go to the grocery store and what we can fill our cart with a $100 bill isn't the same as what it was 3 years ago. So what we've discovered here in reviewing the documents is that we are significantly above the budget that was delivered with the feasibility study in 2021. I'm sorry. I walk when I'm on the phone. I'm a pacer. Sorry.
They can't hear you. Speaking to the mic.
So the project cost is as it was shared with us, as the design and the documents were shared from Colliers, is just over $25 million, and that starts with a construction cost. If you look at the top center number, our construction cost before general conditions, which are like supervision, a job site trailer. When I say supervision, like a superintendent or foreman for each of your prime contractors, their office trailer, their storage, things that aren't a direct deliverable that stays, put in place for you, the client. Those general conditions and bonds typically run about 8 to 10%. So that 16.2 that you see in the top center is our raw construction cost, labor and material, and then the general conditions add about another 9 to 10%. We're showing 9 right here, bringing us just to about 17.7. And then our design contingency that Scott spoke of, we're carrying 10%. That allows us to maintain the overall intent of what's in the design, even though sometimes our estimators at this stage don't know it. So we're carrying maybe a middle of the road light fixture. If it comes back in a subsequent series of drawings and shows a very unique, ornate, aesthetically pleasing light fixture that costs twice as much, that design contingency accounts for and helps you maintain that design feature in your project, instead of it, your cost going up and saying, oh no, now we can't afford to do this, this, and this because we estimated a less expensive option when we put the estimate together earlier. So that design contingency allows you to account and accommodate those changes and still keep the project moving and not remove those scope items that that are decided by the town as an important feature. The next item is our escalation contingency. As we plan for this project to go out in the next 6 to 9 months, we're just carrying that 5% right now as a safety factor for any potential increases in materials and labor between now and the time we go out to bid. The construction contingency, that is also carried right now at 10%. The construction contingency is what we would use after bid for items that might be discovered during the course of construction as either an unforeseen condition underground, behind walls, above ceiling, that wasn't visible and known before that design was put in place. So say we open up this wall right here to do some renovation, and there's an old doorway with a door frame and a steel door that just got drywalled over. We run into that with windows and doors. Well, now the contractor has an additional cost to remove that. It's a little more, little more work. So that would be a cost add to the project. This is just an example. And those type of things, as well as owner requested changes, if Mike were to come to us and say, okay, we need to add another 300 square feet to this curve back here for some of our new vehicles that wasn't known at the time of design, but we're going to need a little more pavement. Owner requests also would go into that construction contingency. It's an add that the contractor is going to cost more. We would track that with the architect, during construction and review those costs, but those costs would be an impact to the project. So we carry that ahead of time. It's kind of like an auxiliary or bank account, if you will, with Lansing, Town of Lansing approval to then expend money on those extra items that are needed to get the project done. Soft costs or incidental costs, as they're often referred to, is the bottom section. That's our fee, the construction manager's fee. Collier's your architect. FF&E, which is fixed furniture and equipment, so any furniture that's not provided by contractors, it might be town selected, finishes, chairs, file cabinets, etc. Testing and inspections, those are all additional costs to the project that aren't borne by contractors. We manage and help oversee and coordinate them, but they're costs that the project, are incurred by the project and the town to complete the overall project. So obviously there's a large discrepancy there, and we've started to work amongst our team to identify options for the town. So we've started to create a value engineering list. Value engineering is a way to provide ideas to reduce costs. Typically, it's either reducing the amount of work that you're doing, reducing or modifying material types. You might choose a less expensive finish, a floor finish, a fixture, sinks, counters, wood finishes. You would choose something a little less expensive. So you're still getting, maybe the desk or the reception desk area. It's going to take up the same amount of space, but it's just going to be built differently and use different materials to work within your budget. Reducing scope items would be the elimination of items, and there are going to need to be some elimination here to reach the point where we're back to the budget that the town has elected to afford this project. So some of those items I'll let Lee kind of run down some of the details. I'm kind of hard to see on there, you might need to speak from the screen, but just some of the value engineering ideas that we've assembled so far.
I can just get closer to the microphone. There we go. So the first item that we considered when we were reviewing this as potential cost savings items was a reduction in scope to the 150 kilowatt generator that we carried in our estimate. Other options are available to bring that cost down, and we've isolated $473,000 as an opportunity, as a value engineering item to consider reducing the cost of the project. The next was, potentially, or holding off on the photovoltaic array that's involved in the project. We've isolated a value for that. These are just suggestions at this point. These aren't in concrete until the board weighs in on them and approves it. With the EV chargers, we had added in 3 each at request, and it's included in the SD estimate at this point. But we have had discussions down to possibly just doing 1 as an example. The reduction in the salt barn scope. We had carried one of the 3 options that were offered by a potential bidder. It was the highest option. This number reflects $335,000 to consider a different option at a much better cost. So that one was likely to go forward. We halved basically the lighting quantity as a potential value engineering item. That's what that $60,000 is. We had suggested the fuel island scope, but that needs to be in the project. That's been clarified. But we would like to entertain a strategy at bid time that would involve an alternate in case that has to be bid at a separate time. The board can consider that as an option, just to secure the project as we reduce scope. Revised site scope, there is a potential for a substantial amount of savings there based on, some information that we got as an addendum as far as the geological survey goes and some projected grading changes. We're hesitant to throw a concrete number at that because that is so vast and it can change a great deal. It could be 1 million, it could be 2 million. There is an opportunity to change there. That value is yet to be realized, but we really should target that. 2 items that we had picked up that we had carried in our estimate were a higher value that were in the design, and we've already approved them ourselves without the consideration for $74,000 for a different storm chamber system and the contractor adjustment for a pre-engineered metal building system. We just realized a different project that was bid and the potential realization of savings there for, $225,000 by considering a different option that was realized in our estimate here. So the elimination and removal of the existing admin portion off the existing building, I think that's your cold storage, right? Is that right? That's that segment of the L-shaped building that is coming off. We had isolated the cost there for $211,000, but I don't know if that is feasible because that is going to be where the location of the new fuel point is going to go. So, deleting the clear story windows at the top of the building yielded a $100,000, reduction in scope. The hybrid building, mechanical equipment, potential savings. We were entertaining cost savings between going fully electric or doing a hybrid system, and we've isolated $138,000 as an opportunity to do that. So, and finally, the last one we have so far is a reduction in fencing scope to the tune of $194,000.
What would that include?
That would include reduction. The reduction in scope would, right now there's like barbed wire on top of the fence, that kind of thing, and the quantity of fence and would be reduced. And that's the value engineering so far.
Can I correct that?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, this was an excellent collaborative effort of ours and the Chase's to present to you ideas about where we did cost saving without sacrificing either the intent or the functionality of the building. So we started with the obvious. There are more, there's a lot more if we want to entertain them. But these are the ones, some of these are elephants in the room. The site, as Lee suggested, could be $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million savings by the time they're realized. These numbers you see right here, right now, already reflect $3.5 million of savings, of opportunities, savings. The site could add easily another $1 million. And then when you start thinking about these costs, remember those contingencies we talked about, that 10% design and 10% construction, those numbers, that's another 20%, right? So again, $3.5 million plus a site $4.5 million, fingers crossed, 20% of that, you're approaching $6 million in savings with contingencies, okay? So that's how quickly these numbers.
But you're $10 million over budget.
No.
I cannot tell you how disappointed I am on behalf of the taxpayers of Lansing that you came to us with this proposal like this. I appreciate that you are working very hard to find the value engineering, but I am very disappointed in this proposal.
So let me go back. So much, this isn't a proposal as much as you had a $15 million budget in 2021. The escalation cost that we don't control, no one controls, is 3.5 years later. That $15 million building then is $21.5 million today, okay? So that $15 million was in a spot in time in 2021. You build that same building today, it's $21.5 million. These numbers are coming in close to 25. I know we have room to get back within that $21 million with these savings. These aren't numbers we're inventing. These are numbers that we're all realizing, okay? Even at a 5% escalation, 5% escalation on 15 million, I'm going to do the math in my head real quick. What is that? $300,000, I think. Is that right? Did I do that right? 15 million, so 10% would be 1.5, so 750,000? Okay. If you do nothing and you wait a year, you've almost realized $750,000. With contingency, that's $1 million. $1 million a year you wait by not doing anything. You can expect to pay $1 million more for that same building if the rest of that escalation didn't happen during COVID. So that 40%, we gave you a number that was reflective of 2021. We're looking at it like we could still build the same building in 2021 today. We cannot. Okay, so we're now here presenting ideas about if we keep the building as is, all the work that's put into the programming, everything that meets your requirements for staff, vehicles, site utilization, demolition, all those numbers are going to equate to about a $20 to $21.5 million project today with no changes. Okay, so we're not over-designing anything to date. If anything, we probably pulled back. I think these saving ideas get you back to that 20-ish mark, if I'm calculating it correctly. I think there's other opportunities. I know we talked about the idea of looking at the site or across the street, possibly as a place to put the salt barn, to reduce more grading, more retaining work, less impact to your site, potentially. We haven't done any of that yet. We would need that approved, obviously. But again, these are all ideas. We're trying to bring the numbers back to where the project is reasonable. I understand that $15 million was approved for the project, but that was 2021. I don't think anybody's paying what they're saying they're paying today. They paid in 2020, 2021. Construction is no different. In fact, I'll say with labor and materials, again, Northeast, probably the highest impacted region, right, by cost across the United States. Maybe the West Coast. But 40% is a real thing. That's a real number. So if we want to reduce the project down to the original budget, we have to reduce the project. That's the reality, right? We have to reduce the project by I'm not going to suggest it has to be 40% of the building, but it has to be a reasonable chunk that has to be removed from the building to get back down to that original budget. Okay? So the project hasn't changed. We haven't underdesigned, we haven't overdesigned it. It's the realities of the numbers today. I do believe those contingencies are very healthy. I think LaChase is very right to put in 10% and 10%. The idea that we don't have to use all those would be a gift. I think we can design this without a whole lot of surprises. We've done geotech investigation, we've done hazmat investigation, so we know a lot of the unknowns already. And no, we're not going to design the Taj Mahal light fixtures and finishes. We're going with basic. I've designed highway garages for 15 years, and I probably touched 30 buildings. Probably built close to a dozen. It's hard to tell any of our taxpayers to accept these buildings, particularly with the interest rates. I mean, I was building buildings 4 years ago, 3% bonds, you know, and 1% bands at the time of construction. Those numbers are gone, right? So we were on borrowed time for sure. The numbers aren't just corrections, they're just large escalations. So we're more than happy to look at the building and talk to you about reducing the scope to bring it back down to a $50 million project, but that would have to mean we'd have to entertain some very large reductions on the project. Okay? And that's why we're here at schematic design. We're not designing the whole building, right? Spending $1 million to get you all the way there to tell you this. We're telling you this at a very, very initial schematic design phase, okay? So that's where we are. Any questions?
If it would help a little bit more to explain the phases that we're in with, before schematic, you had conceptual. That's where the initial amount came out to go out to voters. We're at SD, schematic design right now. And what we have discovered based on the design is we're at this point based on our estimate, which is a red flag for a course correction that's needed. And that's why we're here. It isn't a proposal. It's to bring it out to the public that there's a need to review this project, this phase, before we go forward. That's why we're presenting.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Ruth? Are you okay?
I don't
Is everything
think so.
else?
Does anybody else have any?
Okay. Thank you.
We have two
Thank you.
people that are watching on YouTube, and
Okay, sure.
they haven't been able to get in, so they're not.
Oh, they can't chime in? Okay.
We apologize, we're a quorum tonight. We have
No, thank you.
two people that have
Totally understood.
personal issues going on. Privilege of the floor, do we have anybody signed up for that? I know we do. We have two people on here. Before we get started, I want to explain the privilege of the floor. It says the public shall be allowed to speak only during public comment and privilege of the floor period of the meeting or during public hearings. Speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer and step to the front of the room. So when you come up, please come up to the speaker. You must give your name, state whether you are speaking as a resident, a member of the public, or for any other person or organization. Speakers must limit their remarks to 3 minutes, and comments unrelated to the subject matter of the public hearing are not allowed. Speakers may not yield any remaining time they have to another speaker. With the permission of the presiding officer, a board or committee member may interrupt a speaker for the purpose of clarification or information and not for any other reason or to debate or disagree. Such time shall not be counted against the speaker's 3-minute limit. All remarks shall be addressed to the board or committee as a body and not to any member thereof, nor to any other member of the public, whether present or at such public hearing or not. Speakers shall observe the commonly accepted rules of courtesy, decorum, dignity, and good taste. Interested parties or their representatives may address the board by written communications. Written documents and evidence may be submitted as part of a record of the public hearing. Persons who exceed 3 minutes violate rules of courtesy, decorum, dignity, or good taste, or deliberately or by their behavior interfere with other persons' right to comment or participate in the public hearing, or who deliberately or by their behavior interfere with governmental administration will be cut off, removed, or have non-recognized comments removed from the record, or any combination of the above. Before a comment or statement will be excised From the record, the speaker will be verbally warned that they are in violation of the rules of this public hearing. So, the first one on the list is Nathan Cook.
Good evening, Board. Can I use the screen for a second?
Sure.
Hopefully this will work. Okay. And let's make this a little bigger. I'm cognizant of my time, so I'll try to make this as brief as possible. My name's Nathan Cook. I'm a partner at Klausner Cook, which is a Lansing-based law firm, and I'm here today on behalf of Westview Partners, who was a developer on the Sun Path project. And we went to the planning board to discuss a site plan revision, and I've had a couple of preliminary conversations with Guy about this as well. And the planning board asked us to come back to this board and have a conversation about what the sort of board of Lansing wants to do with installing roads in the future. And so to give the board just a little bit of background, this plan was approved in 2014, so 10 years ago, that there was going to be development on the Sun Path project, and some done in phases. There are some houses that have been put in, and then there's a desire to, put more houses in. As some of the folks that were just speaking, ironically, a lot has changed since 2014. Construction costs have gone up. Everybody's sort of, looking at what they want to do. And one of the challenges that we have as we look at sort of Sun Path is that there is contemplation of putting a road that would go this way and possibly a road that would go down here as well. And part of what makes this challenging is that the road that was being contemplated was going to go from the end of Sun Path up through to East Lake Road over here. And so one of the things that you might notice is that if that was actually going to happen, the road would have to go right next to the person's swimming pool that has it, right in the roadway essentially, on the way to go from Sun Path to East Lake Road. And so the consensus coming out of the planning board when we approached them about having a site plan review is to say to the board, are you actually planning on putting the roads through, which is something that the consensus from the neighbors that all own the properties around this area don't want the 60-foot wide roads. And so if you're not actually going to put the roads through, then having the developer build roads that just end at somebody's backyard and don't actually go through doesn't really make sense. It's kind of a added expense for no value. If there's a way to rethink these projects, maybe we don't need to put that road in, and we can think about something else. Maybe it's a trail for the children or something like that. The other kind of road question was connecting the property to the south, which is owned by, I believe, the Mahul estate at this point. I think Leo has passed. And the consensus from our group is that there's access to that property from Lake Watch, which the same Mahul estate owns. So if they wanted to develop it, even though there's no plans for develop it, they could certainly approach it from their own entrance without having to require us to put a road in that would go to that spot. So I was hoping to get a little bit of comment from you and your perspectives so I could take that back to the planning board and share it with the planning director as to whether there's a real desire to put in the roads or if we can have a conversation.
Thank you, Nathan. I have no comments because I don't think I really have enough background information on this, but I'll let you guys
I think we need to examine this in a more thorough manner to really make a fair decision both to the landowners and to you and your client to make a reasonable decision. So thank you very much for bringing this issue to our attention. It's definitely something we can consider, but I think we need to also, we're 2 board members down who would like to probably weigh in on this as well. So what would be our next step to be able to get the full information and look into this issue?
I have to like to talk to the planning board, to our planner, and see what the background is on this. Just to understand the entire
Of
concept.
course.
Because
And-
this is all new to us.
And if it's at all helpful for me to prepare like a background memo or something to share with like what I know to date, I wasn't involved in the original plan 10 years ago, but I've now become involved, so I'm trying to usher it through essentially.
Yeah, I think we just need you're welcome to send a letter to the board explaining that, but like I said, we just need to do a lot more research. It's hard to make a decision like this on the fly.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I think Guy was involved, way back when, and probably knows more of the
All the way back to
history
2005,
than I do.
lawsuits and all.
So if there's anything that would help you in your determination or advising the board, I'm happy to provide that as well.
Well, yeah, the only thing I would tell this board is that subdivision layout and control primarily is the jurisdiction of the planning board. That legislative authority was delegated to the planning
Right.
board. But I think the planning board would want to know what infrastructure the town would accept, because that's the town board's function, to decide what roads to accept versus not accept. When they're platted, if they're not accepted, they would potentially remain private roads. And you get into general municipal law and town law, and it gets pretty complicated what happens to a road. I think subdivision roads should be made simple and clear.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
So I thank the board for its time. I'll follow up with Guy. Is that the appropriate place for follow-up?
Well, yeah, as an attorney, you should follow up with me. If your client wanted to follow up, it would probably be directly with John Zepko.
I've already started a conversation with John. He was at the planning board meeting that asked me to come here, so I'll continue that conversation,
Okay.
I guess. And then hopefully, maybe we can have another discussion at the next board meeting, or how does that request work?
Yeah, we'll see where we are at that point, and then if you request to be on the agenda, we can do that.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Rowan Hall? I didn't say it right.
I know, it's Siobhan, but the
Siobhan,
spelling is
okay.
exceedingly deceiving. It is not at all your fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my name is Siobhan. I currently live in Ithaca, but I was a Lansing resident for several years, and I now work at the Cornell Cooperative Extension as the Lansing Non-Pipes Alternatives Outreach and Educator Coordinator. What a title. And I'm just here to provide a little bit of additional information about some additional financial incentives that might be available if the town pursues a clean heat HVAC system. So I know there was already some discussion of incentives today. I just wanted to go through some other incentives that the Cooperative Extension is aware of for ground source heat pumps specifically, and talk about some that might apply to that as well as to the air source heat pumps. So through the Clean Energy Communities Program, the town is eligible for up to $85,000 in grant funding for clean heating projects. And in order to secure this funding, the town would just have to submit documentation of previous work. So things like the streetlight to LED conversion, energy code enforcement training, the clean heating and cooling campaigns for tiers 2 and 3. So these are all things you've already done. You could submit it and be eligible for this $85,000. The town is also eligible for funding through the IRA incentive program, which could grant up to 1/3 of the total project cost for ground source heat pumps, and that's specific to ground source heat pumps. The town may also qualify for New York State clean heat rebates, which we'd seen presented previously, which would further drop the installation price. And so all of these things together could really dramatically lower the payback period of the geothermal system. And I also wanted to highlight the Lansing Non-Pipes Alternatives Program, which is, and the exact number of that would depend on how large your current system is, because it's based off of removing the natural gas infrastructure entirely. So, as we heard today in the presentation, there are a lot of benefits of ground source heat pumps, including those lower maintenance costs compared to your natural gas systems. It has a bit of a longer lifespan, increased temperature control and efficiency, and greater overall comfort in the building. And so there are a number of financial incentives available to help you make that installation of a ground source system possible, which I just think might be worth exploring a little bit further. So myself and the others at the Cooperative Extension are available to help you navigating accessing those incentives. Happy to answer any questions that you might have as you move forward with that decision. And I think it's really great that you're dedicating time to talking about this, because I think it's a really good move for the town. And as a side note, I also have these Community Resource Hub flyers that I promised to bring, so I can either leave them on the table back there or hand them to you now. So thank you so much. Okay. Perfect.
Thank you. You came last month, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I came and talked about the NPA program as well with Chris Gossi from the CCE.
Great. Thank you for coming back. I actually remember most of this from the last presentation, but I appreciate you reminding us about the incentives. Just a quick question for Pat. Do you remember how many BTUs our existing boiler has?
I don't off the top of my head.
Okay, because it wasn't in the
Not in the report.
Nope, I just looked.
I can find that for you.
That's okay.
Email to you.
Because I think it's $1,000 for BTU, is that correct?
So
roughly?
in order to get the exact number, we would have to do an estimate with Earth Sensitive Solutions as the one who's eligible for that incentive program. So the work would have to be done in collaboration with them. And it's so dependent that I can't give you a super good number. But they do have an estimate on their website if you're looking for something even more basic than starting to work with them. So if you send me the actual number, I can chat with them a little bit and try to get you a better estimate.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you. All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Department reports. We have the Lansing Community Libraries in our packet. Youth Services in the packet. I see Mike Sigler's not here for his report. Mike Mosley, Highway report.
Good evening. I want to say thank you for allowing Bergman, Colliers, sorry, the name change, and LeChase to come in. You know, our main goal was, I was shocked at the price, right? And our main goal was to really, we didn't come before the board to ask for more money, but it's to really bring you up to speed of where we're at. It's a concern of the committees. We work to at least come up with some ideas. I'm like, look, I can't go before the board without some cuts here. And it's just brainstorming, but honestly, it's very important to communicate, the committee felt, with you guys. With that said, you know, there's potential of about $1 million savings if we can move the salt barn from its location where you kind of saw with the grading in the east part to where the current brush pile is. It would save on grading, moving of earth, the walls would change. And so the committee would recommend that maybe we could do a study and see if it would be feasible to put the salt barn in that location. We think there's value in that, there's a savings in that, and we'd at least like to take a look at that before I get to my report. So my report's in the packet. We've been busy with tree and brush removal. This is a little behind, but crews improved some line of sight around the town. The mulching was done within the brush pile. Brush continues to come in. We've had a couple windstorms of late. About 5 or 6 trees fell down the other day. Let's see, working to expand the mulch pile and spoils location as I'm trying to create as much room as I can. Future, we need to have room for the materials we use to build the highway, and as things shift up back, I'm just trying to be prepared a little bit for that shift and change. Let's see, crews work to remove and clear down trees from storms. Of late, we had a storm on Saturday. We only had 1 tree down in East Lansing. Thank you to the Lansing Fire Department for helping out with that. But the other day, with the winds we had about probably 6 trees down, some in wires, and it's a little bit of a mess around Tompkins County. Under water and sewer maintenance, we worked to fix a water main break. The crews did, I should say, at
113, 119 Ridge Road. We started to locate and work on lead service pipes, and that's at the bottom of Estes Hill, McKinney's Point. I've gotten through about half. We have a total of 7. I've gotten through about half of them. It's quite challenging down there. It's quite tight between the railroad, houses being built almost on top of the water services and whatnot. But I'm working to have a hydro excavation company come in and at least get down to the town's responsibility, the town side from the curb stop to the main, to make sure that that is not a lead service and that is copper. On a positive note, with the power issues we've had up on the within the Warren Road Sewer District up on Farrell Road, we've had some power failures there. I contacted Brad George at NICEAG. He sent me to another man at NICEAG who was willing to basically gauge the power coming off the main lines to the substation there, to our lift station, excuse me. And they found that the transformers weren't the right size. So they put in a work order to increase the transformers for that lift station, which will hopefully provide the proper amount of amperage to the lift station so the motors don't trip. Let's see. Road maintenance, we've been working right along, prepping our roads for paving. Our paving is about 90% done, thereabouts. We'll try to finish up here within the month. Try to get done early. We beat escalation. We stay at the low end of cost per tons for blacktop. That's always my goal. So, on garage work, I did actually want to thank the mechanic from the state DOT barn, Ben, who heads up that barn, was kind enough to allow Zach to come down. We've had some issues with our brand new grade all. Just for the mechanic to come out from Alta is $200 an hour. And that's to plug into the computer with the cord to tell us what's wrong with the machine. So they were kind enough to come down. They have the software. The software is around $7,000 to $10,000 a year. So it's working, with other municipalities. So thank you to the state DOT for helping us out with that. Attended the highway school that the Cornell Local Roads Program puts on at Ithaca College. As always, it's very educational. A maintenance workshop, leadership workshop, and the finance, kind of similar to what you guys go to as well. I guess that's really it in a nutshell. So, any questions?
Do you think there's any reasonable expectation that we can get this highway barn project with the functionality that you need down to the budget or even close?
That's a tough question.
Yeah. I don't necessarily expect you to have an answer right now, but boy, we need to do something.
Well, yeah, I'm a taxpayer in the town too, and it hit me right away. If the board feels that they want to hold that line at the 15 million, then the committee will work hard and diligently to make that happen. That is going to that's going to mean downsizing the admin. You're going to lose some square footage in the barn. But look, we can come back and forth. We can work to show you what it could look like. So you have the best information. That's our job, right? To get you the best information to make those decisions. These aren't easy, but we'll do our best to put everything before you.
Thank you, Mike. I'm not trying to call you on the carpet. I'm just, I have a really hard time going back to ask for more money than $15 million, which is already an awful lot of money for a little town to pay.
And I'm a taxpayer just like you, and all my neighbors are taxpayers, and we have a responsibility, you and I and everyone on this board, to do the best that we can for our community. And I just, I want to find a solution.
100% with you. Absolutely. Like I said, our intention was not to come here and say, we expect the town board to agree to pay this. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But with the guidance of the town board and what direction you'd like us to go, we will strive to reach that.
Right. And to be fair, I also do care about the safety of the employees, the long-term well-being of the equipment, the people who work there, enough administrative space that people can get their jobs done. Those things are important to me too. So, and probably important to everyone on this board.
Mhm.
But I guess I just had a little sticker shock and I got frustrated.
Absolutely. Mine was over a telephone call, or, you're presented here, so it's challenging. I absolutely understand.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'll say, I'm on that committee too, and I attended the meetings, and it is difficult, because that is sticker shock. But I do know for a fact that the prices have gone up 40%, almost across the board on materials, and that was just a given.
Sorry, Dave, if it'd be all right if Dave
Sure.
we chatted here and...
Yeah, if I could use my report
Do
time
your
just
report.
to-
Please do. Go ahead.
And then we'll get back to you, Pat.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Oh, no, all good, go ahead. Okay.
You sure?
I'm sure.
When the estimate became available and Mike shared it with us, I had looked at, from a technical only perspective, I had looked at the estimate and provided Mike with some thoughts on a little bit of out-of-box thinking, plus where there might be some revisiting of the extents of the program. And some of what that document that I shared, and Ruth ultimately had gotten a copy of it, was presented tonight in some of those line items that Chase had described. There's still others that I had thought of that could be considered by the design team that weren't reflected in the list tonight. So I think there's still more opportunity for what I call out-of-box thinking. It may not be out-of-box, it may not be genuine, it just may be smart. So I hope that we'll see some more of that coming to the town. But as Mike alluded earlier, one opportunity to ensure that there's some cost savings in the site work, which the number you saw tonight was 0. And it was alluded that there could be some fairly large savings in site earthwork costs. And a part of that is considering moving the salt barn over to the current chip or brush storage area. So that is outside of the original concept plan feasibility footprint that the town was provided. It's still part of the highway campus. It's still part of the town's properties, but it's, if Mike and the board want to see the potential benefits of making that adjustment, I expect that the consultants are going to want clear direction from the town to do so.
Right.
Okay? So I think at this point, without some clear expression of, yes, please look at it, we're probably in this holding pattern with Collier's continued progression in the design phase. So I just wanted to make that point with you.
Appreciate that. Did you have anything else as your engineer's report other than that?
No.
Okay.
Good answer.
All right.
That's a $10 million item, so that was enough.
Okay, that's good, that's good. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate your input. I know you're always looking out for the town. We really appreciate that.
You're welcome, thank you.
Pat?
So, my report is in your packet. I'll just touch on a couple things. Next week is a very big week for us because we start camps next week, obviously with summer. Guarded swimming is going to open next week at Myers, which we've been getting phone calls, obviously with the hot weather, multiple calls per day. So that will start on Monday as well. The cheerleader group that we have, our recreational cheerleaders, hosted a car show at the park, huge success. Largest ones thus far, and probably will continue to grow and hopefully maybe someday be as big as the Fillmore car show. Leadville hosted a Juneteenth celebration. I don't know if any of you attended. I was not able to attend, but I heard it was well received. And we have installed a couple new bridges on the trail across the road. Thanks to Mikey for some help with equipment to get that done. Unless anyone has any questions, we are monitoring for harmful algae blooms already with the heat. We are checking the park every day and as Salt Point as well.
Thank you.
I saw on the thing you have some drainage work that you were working on.
Yeah.
Was it last year that Myers Park flooded, or there was a lot of water in Myers?
We've had issues yearly with certain parts of the park flooding, with the creek obviously changing its flow. We have worked with the highway department on installing some riprap in there in the past. Hopefully we can dredge the creek this year, fingers crossed, and hopefully alleviate some of that problem from happening.
Okay. So you hadn't really worked on drainage issues?
We worked on drainage issues throughout the park, kind of internally putting some drain lines in and trying to evacuate some water that shouldn't be on the grass infield.
Okay.
I noticed you had something on here about some roofs leaking too.
Yes, obviously we've had, and Dave's been part of these discussions as well, ongoing discussions about multiple roofs within the town, the community center. Some of the ridge cap is missing at this point. The schoolhouse right next door, there is several holes from squirrels chewing through the cedar shakes on the roof. So obviously, at some point that needs to be addressed, and maybe Dave can speak to that more, but it's been a while since we've looked at it.
What are we doing about the holes in the roof temporarily?
We have patched them the best we can, but again, it's cedar shakes that are on the roof, so it's not the easiest thing to patch.
Budget time's coming.
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Debbie?
My report's in the packet if anyone has any questions.
All right. Consent agenda. Okay, do you want to, Lori, you want to read the first
I'll take the
four?
first three.
Or three? Okay,
Sure.
the first three.
Okay. I'll take 4 if you want.
No, three's fine.
Yeah. Resolution scheduling public hearing for proposed law number something of 2024 override tax levy limit. Resolution approving AIA C132-2019 Construction Manager Advisor Services Agreement with LaChase Construction Services LLC. Resolution of the Town of Lansing to join the Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council.
And Christine, the next three.
Resolution approving license agreement with Cursat Landscaping. Resolution updating agreement for the expenditure of highway monies. Resolution appointing Edward DeBovie as Town of Lansing liaison to the Tompkins County Environmental Management Council.
Okay, and the resolution approving audit and budget modifications. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Lori Hemmings,
Aye.
Christine Montag,
Aye.
Ruth Brock.
Aye.
I would like to just say one thing.
Sure.
The expenditure of the highway monies, there's a document that needs to be signed by all town board members. So at the end of the meeting, if I could just catch up with 3 of you that are here,
All right.
that would help.
Okay, sounds good, thank you. Board member reports. Does anybody have, I know Joe submitted his in the packet, but either of you, do you have one that you'd like to report?
No.
Mine's not in the packet, and mine's long, but I will give you just a recap of some of the highlights of it. I attended the Tompkins County Council of Governments on May 23rd, and there was a presentation by Don Barber about the food system in Tompkins County, and a motion was carried to support the food systems plan and their initiatives. And an update on the rapid medical response indicated an average response time of 7 minutes. There were 84 calls in April. We had an Employee Appreciation Day on May 29th. The event included lunch, lawn games, a raffle, and certificates of appreciation for years of service. Sandwiches, side dishes, and drinks were provided by the town board, and brownies were donated by Crossroads. And each employee was given 5 raffle tickets to bid on a choice of 11 items donated by the following local businesses: Ace Hardware, Applebee's, Cayuga Landscape, Dottie's Cakes, Michaeline's, Pizza and Bones, Salt Point Brewing, Squeaky Clean, and Thaler and Thaler. And I think Joe had in his report about the ribbon cutting at Sims Jennings, which I participated in. Another interesting thing I did was the county legislature had a 200th birthday celebration for Daniel Tompkins, the man for whom our county was named.
Oh.
And that was fun. So, okay, that's the highlights of mine.
Your mom.
And Ruth, will you send that to me or give it to me?
I emailed it to you just a little while ago.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we're ready for our work session. The first item on here is the Consolidated Water District Extension Number 3 dissolution. And I'll give you a little bit, Jack Guy can probably give you more information, but I do want to say that let me find it. There was a letter sent out from the town board, from Ed Levine, back in 2022, and I'll read this to you. It says, the notice this was sent to the landowners, that said the Consolidated Water District Extension Number 3, that the Lansing Town Board has resolved that the proposal does not meet the standards for engineering, planning, and fiscal feasibility. Therefore, the concurrent map plan and report revision process, the public interest order process, and all future reviews for CWDX3, which is the abbreviation for this, will be terminated and CWDX3 will be dissolved. And it was never technically dissolved.
Oh.
So,
I think that was the water that was supposed to be coming to our house,
yes, possibly.
and it no longer comes to our house. It's very sad.
I don't think there's anything we're going to vote on tonight necessarily, but I just wanted some discussion, and if the rest of the board agrees that we should go ahead and, what is the process for dissolving it, Guy?
You would do it's findings, public hearing, and determination under General Municipal Law, Article 17A. And you would just have to go through the steps to let the state comptroller know that once planned taxing authority that they initially approved isn't ever going to exist. There are other proposals that are in the pipeline to perhaps find alternative or smaller, more feasibly sized, for lack of a better term, water districts, but you can't put a district on top of a district. Just like you can't have a fire district overlap a fire protection district. There can only be one. So as long as this stands, it blocks any other attempts to do it by a means other than a project involving 6 miles of mains. So whether to dissolve or not is up to you. The board had previously determined, based upon a pretty lengthy analysis that was unanimously approved by the Water and Sewer Advisory Board, when it was determined that project costs were in the measure of $600,000 in overruns, that we were getting the 200% of the comptroller's threshold, and what was once considered a good idea was no longer a good idea. It wasn't fiscally possible anymore. So if other districts were to, if there were other ways to accomplish some of what was sought to be accomplished with one giant fell swoop, in other words, smaller districts that are more targeted at where the EDUs are, that can make connections without having to run across miles of farmland, you would have to remove it if you wanted to actually entertain one of those proposals. If none of those proposals ever came on the board, you could leave it there, but as that analysis of the cost overrun was based in 21 or 2019, 2020, in that range, and you saw 40% in construction just in the past 3 years, and frankly, the cost of pipe is way over 40%. That was up as much as 57%. So this thing's getting farther and farther in the rearview mirror. I think it'll be inevitable that some board will have to dissolve it. The question is, do you want to do it now, or do you want to reconsider figuring out if there's a way to finance that project? I don't think there is, because we don't qualify for census tract financing based upon, that's where the money really is. And this town doesn't qualify, and I don't know what other sources would be out there.
So essentially, to redesign it, you'd have to dissolve it and then make a new, different sized?
Well, I think so, but I mean, I'm not an engineer, so I mean, I defer to Dave on that. But I think what the town maybe ought to gather from the experience is that whenever the town attempts a really, really large project, the South Lansing sewer main, $29 million trunk main, do you remember that one? Then there was the sewer project that was going to take the whole town center all the way to the school, and that involved building a sewer plant. It was, District 6 was also like miles and miles of main. Whenever the town tries to get into a project that is just gigantic in size, the project tends to be like a dinosaur. It fails of its own weight. And it's not necessarily that the project was ill-conceived or poorly designed, it's just they become so large, and the different pieces that have to move at such a glacial pace that you basically run out of room to maneuver out of cost overruns and inflation. And so you're constantly, when that was done, we were also dealing with bond rates of under 3%, and now they're over 6%. So my takeaway on it, having been through like 5 or 6 projects like this where they just grow and grow and grow and become so big that they're just sort of like lumbering giants running down hills. They know they need to change direction, but they just can't. I would say that the town should be careful about what size districts it wants to tackle, given that it is, for lack of a better term, a relatively small rural town. It has urban elements, it has a strong tax base, but most of that tax base is residential. And there are limits to what you can do when you run into a project that requires 6 miles of main. One of the other drawbacks to that project, which doesn't hit paper, but in order to get it approved, since the Department of Agriculture and Markets was very strongly against it, we had to enter into a no lateral extension agreement. So if someone wasn't in the district but lived next door, we could not give them water. They would have to apply for a hardship exception, and they would have to get it from the state of New York. So in a sense, I'm not even sure it's wise to lose control over your own water district in that sense. And that's because we went really far into the ag districts with this plan. And it really grew because it was searching for more EDUs. And every time you found a cluster of homes that was interested, you had to cross a farm field to get there, and it became a zero-sum game.
Sorry, what's an EDU?
Equivalent dwelling unit.
Dwelling?
Dwelling, right. So a single-family home, generally speaking, is one EDU. The town does its water districts and sewer district on what's called a benefit basis. The people that achieve the benefits are the one paying for it, so that the rest of the town isn't called upon to pay for it. The rest of the town is called upon to pay for these things when the districts do not go forward. All that expense drops down into the general fund. So the taxpayers generally have paid for an awful lot of sewer and water district studies, millions of dollars over the years, that those districts never ended up paying for. It all fell to the general fund. So there's more than just feasibility that goes into the question of fiscal prudence relative to the size of a district. We have to take a bite that we can actually chew. That'd be my recommendation. But whether to dissolve District 3 or not is up to you. I mean, who knows what funding may be available in a year or two, but I think if you were over by 600,000 in 2020, I think you're well over $1 million today, with financing probably 1.5. So I'm not sure there's much to save, but I'm also sure I'm not a fiscal person and I'm not an engineer, and I don't have a vote on the board, so I think you guys will have to get that information and chew on it.
All right.
So are we actually transferring the cost of this feasibility study into the general fund if we dissolve this right now or vote on it soon?
No, well, it would already happen.
It's already happened, okay.
Yeah, it would already happen. Just like District 6, all those costs dropped down. I think District 4 was probably about as big as we could handle internally, and even that's a stretch, because parts of it still had to be subbed out. And that was just the loop on Drake Road. And if you look at that, that's what, about a mile?
Yeah, it's
A little over a mile?
The services, half the services we bid out just to speed up the process.
Yeah, it's a little under a mile because the old Cottonwood carried it all the way partway down the road.
Yeah, it's past
So the largest project we had successfully completed prior to that date was about a mile of main, and the last two projects that we looked at both exceeded 5 miles of mains. So some things grow organically and some grow inorganically. How to manage them, I think, is up to the board. I'll leave it at that.
Before we wait for, can I ask, clicking of pens and things, it comes out really loud on the.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I do paper clips and these things I do, I'll put it way away from me. Sorry about that. Sorry, everyone.
I just know when I try to listen to it at home on YouTube, it's like all you hear is the click, click, click. But anyway.
Maybe I did it to drive Joe crazy.
Yeah.
You owe me lunch.
Okay, so I mean, that's something for discussion. Since there are only 3 of us here tonight, we probably don't need to take this much further. Maybe it would be better when the entire board is here to have.
What's the next step?
Is to actually start the process for the dissolution.
Right, there would be a resolution to start the process. Again, I would say.
So essentially, it's a sunk cost at this time, and there's no additional cost by dissolving the district, other than the acknowledgement that if we want another sewer district, we have to get another study and find something that's actually feasible, correct?
Yes, if you went with a newer water district to target maybe areas that had need or areas where you could stay within the comptroller's thresholds, you would have to take this district out first. But that was the original recommendation from the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee when it gave the board its opinion, was that if there's something that is worth saving here, it's worth doing it in small manageable pieces, not something that would be a 3-year build.
Okay. So if it helps, an additional paragraph in this letter goes on to say that the town board has reached this decision upon analysis of the process to present, including consideration of the final recommendation from the Water and Sewer Advisory Board. The recommendation outlines the steps that have been undertaken since project conceptualization circa 2017, and determines that the plan cannot readily or easily be made achievable, most notably the implications of rising costs associated with project continuation in a district of the proposed size were found to far exceed the limits set by New York State with no clear way to project actual cost to taxpayers over the course of the project.
Okay.
So that kind of clarifies what, you know, validates what Guy was just saying.
Okay.
All right.
So shall we just put this off for
Yeah.
the July meeting then? Okay. I had an item on here, put on the work session based on some conversations I was hearing in supervisors' meetings, and that is, it's apparently getting to be an issue or a problem around the county of people living in RVs year-round, as opposed to just setting them there. And I don't know if it's been an issue in Lansing. I haven't heard of it, but it is an issue for the towns that do have it. They say it's a safety issue and a zoning issue and a taxing issue.
You also have, just not to pile on, but you also have people that live in campsites year-round, tents.
Do we have those in Lansing?
We will. It's
no,
more or less of an affordable housing issue, more
It's
so
an
than
affordable
anything
housing
else.
issue. That was the first thing I was going to say about it, is the problem is people want to live here or want to work here, and they can't afford to buy a house. And that's been a part of our comprehensive plan. It was an acknowledgement when that plan was written 10 years ago that the rising cost of housing is driving people who have entry-level jobs or younger people in the community out. So, for example, there are communities or parcels, if you will, where a family member parks an RV on another family member's parcel and then lives there, and that, you know, because they can't afford to live somewhere else. So before we actually addressed it, I'd love to know, to have some real data on how much of a problem it actually is in our town.
Well, that's what the reason I brought it up.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
Because I don't know either. I've seen one example in one place, so that's one. And I'm not inclined to complain about that particular example either. So, you know, I would say, unless we have a better solution, and I'm sure it is a very complex issue to tackle, we want to be really careful about taking people who can't afford to live here and making them leave.
I understand, but I think the main concern that the other municipalities are having is it is a safety issue, because it's not safe to be living in an RV, I think, in the middle of the winter in New York, and it's part of New York State. But there are other issues too, but you're right, I mean, it's something I think that we need to look at, we need to start being aware of and consider it in our zoning, whether we're going to allow it or not.
Yeah.
But I just want to get it out there, sort of just put a bug in everybody's ear that it could be an issue. We could make it an issue or not. It's up to this board, but I just want to get it out there earlier than later on that topic. So, any other comments on that? One of the things we really do need to do is assign a team for the Lansing Highway Association negotiations this year. I was wondering if you had any suggestions. I mean, the first thing that in my mind would be Judy Drake. She's not here, so we can appoint her to the commission, to a committee. No, but with her HR background, I think she would be a logical person to be on that.
I would certainly support that if Judy feels that she feels comfortable and has time to do it.
Yeah. No, I certainly will ask her. I'm not going to.
She's not going to be voluntold.
But no, well, I think Judy would be a logical one.
Is that the same group that we did the negotiation, looked at the negotiation? Do they negotiate every year?
Yeah, every year, whatever you agree to, it's a year, 2 year, 3 year contract.
Okay.
You be comfortable starting.
Yeah.
So I know last year it was you, me, Guy, and Joe?
Yep.
It was the four of us?
Yep.
And,
They ended up not agreeing to anything that you guys wanted to do, essentially, right?
No, I mean, we came to an agreement.
Yeah.
But it was only they usually do what, 2 years, is it, or 3? 3 years?
Yeah.
We only did it 1 year this time because we knew we were getting a new board for one thing. And we knew we were looking at some organizational changes for another. So there were many reasons why we only did it for 1 year this time. But
Well, the year before, it was only 1 year as
Was
well.
it?
So,
Okay.
So I would recommend for stability, working through a longer contract, but my understanding of the reason for doing the shorter contract was the reevaluation and potential rewriting of the employee handbook.
Right.
And the union had a good point about the fact that we had said, oh, this information is in the employee handbook, and then they looked at the employee handbook and said, nope, it's not there. And any sensible person would say, we're not bargaining away our agreement for language that isn't there. So, you know, a longer contract, it seems to me, would be dependent on completion of the employee handbook project, and I don't know where that stands.
Well, we're working on it.
I know you're
We
working
have
on
that, yeah.
it, so, you know, but that can take longer than a year. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
but the issue tonight is appointing a committee
Okay.
to do that, so.
Mary Ellen was trying to say something.
No, I was just going to say, we do, sooner than later, to negotiate this would be best, so that we can make sure that as we're doing the handbook, that we have two documents that agree with each other.
exactly.
So, any other suggestions, or?
Well, I think Joe is a good backup if Judy is unavailable. I'd be interested in doing it if you know, depending on what the negotiation schedule is when it meets. And, you know, I'd be sort of like third backup because the time is tricky for me outside of working hours.
Anybody else want to volunteer to be? Of course, we can't have more than 2 board members on it.
Oh,
Right. I mean, I think the committee you had last time was good and did good work. I think Judy would be an excellent addition if Jill wants to step down. I think kind of the supervisor has to be there. I don't mean to say, you know, just load stuff on you, Ruth.
No, I'm fine with that. I was expecting that. To be honest. So I can. Oh, she logged off, okay. I'll check with Judy, but I think she would be the logical one, and of course, Mike should be on it.
Yeah.
Some guys should be.
Right, I forgot you were there last night, sorry.
Yeah.
if you guys want me there, I'll be there. If you want me to just to advise the team, I'll advise the team. If you don't want me there, I won't be there. Whatever.
I think it was a good group last year. Very well.
Yeah, it makes sense to have a guy.
I didn't hear what you said, Mike.
I'm sorry, I was speaking softly. I said, I agree with Lori, I think it was a really good group last year.
Yeah.
My 2 cents doesn't matter, but I think Lori would be a good addition too.
All right, so Judy, Ruth, Mike, and Guy as advisor.
Sure.
Or you can come to the meetings. We'll put you on.
What if,
Judy, Ruth, Mike,
I
Lori
can't.
is the third.
Can you come to the mic so people at home can hear?
And I was just trying to write down.
I'm sorry.
I was getting confused. I've got all your names except for Christine's written down. So I just wanted to double, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay.
So it was Mikey,
Mike, Guy, me, and Judy.
Okay, that's what I
And
thought.
then Joe is a
So
backup.
Joe's
Joe's a
not.
backup. And
Joe
she's
is a backup and me as a backup to Joe.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, whoever's on negotiating team is the negotiating team, but the rest of the town board will still have a chance to
Right.
review and comment.
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
And you don't have
Thank you.
anybody from any of your employees on there?
Yeah, it would be
Yes.
Scott Purcell and Kevin Day.
They're on the,
Yeah, that's a
Union.
highway plan.
they're on the association.
So they're not part of this team here?
No,
We're
it's.
just trying to get it straight.
it's The
Okay.
town's is bargaining with the association.
Okay.
Right, and they are the
union stewards or whatever their
Right.
title is.
Right.
Stewards, excuse me.
Guy, we met during work hours, is that, my mind's a little bit foggy on that, when we met here, is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, we
thank you.
did. Okay, so we'll,
So we don't know if Judy could meet during work hours.
and that's the-
she's usually, I mean, if we can make it an early, usually early hours are fine with her. I like to sleep in. I'm kidding. Okay, all right.
Well, if it's convenient for Judy, we could also meet at my office, because it's 2 doors down.
Oh,
You can meet where, I'm sorry?
My office,
His office,
That's true.
downtown.
Could do that.
Because Judy is only 2 doors away. She can walk over and take 2 minutes instead of a 15-minute drive.
Okay.
If that half hour is important,
Okay.
it's an option. That's all.
Okay.
it's kind of a trade-off between Judy's time and Mike and his team's time,
Right.
Yeah.
if we have it downtown.
or if it's early in the morning and she
Yeah.
hasn't gone into work yet.
Yeah, sometimes she
Yeah.
just comes here, yeah.
But always good to consider other solutions. All right.
All right, that's, the one thing, I kind of wish Guy was here, because this is really his.
Joe.
Yeah, Joe. What did I say?
This was Joe's
I'm
issue.
sorry.
He's got way
Joe was
more hair
here.
than
I
I
wish
do.
Guy was here. Talking about the spectrum, he did send an email, did you
Yeah,
folks all have a
yes,
chance to
yes,
read
yes.
it? And I'm not really sure, I guess he just really wanted us to review it, because at some point we're going to need to talk about the negotiations, so we just want to make sure that everybody was on board with or at least an understanding of what it's all about. I suppose I should I read it for the people at home, or just?
So
I have no idea what you're talking
Give
about.
a-
It's an
so-
email from Joe explaining the background of why he's bringing, in lieu of him being here, he sent an
Oh,
email.
okay.
Maybe just give an overview.
Yeah, well, it just says that the town has a contract with Spectrum to allow them to run their cables up and down along the road. This contract expires somewhere like 10 or 15 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, we hired a gentleman a specialist in telecommunications law to help the town renegotiate the contract with Spectrum. So that's kind of basically what we're looking at right now. And I don't know if I want to pursue this conversation, because I feel like Joe really needs to be here to lead it.
So wait till
Unless anybody
next
has, or
month.
Guy, are you up on this whole thing?
I haven't, if there is an agreement that has been amended since it was submitted for the town to review, I don't know, 6, 8 months ago, I haven't seen it. Like, if there was something that was sent to you guys to look at in respect of what it is that will ultimately be approved, I don't have a copy of it, so I don't have a
So-
comment on it.
My recollection from Joe's email, and I'm just going off, I mean, Ruth could probably confirm, is that we sent a proposal to Spectrum asking for some changes and asking for a renegotiation of the contract, which has been not signed, has
Right.
expired for a long time,
Right.
and they expressed that they were not interested in our terms. And we have very little power to enforce our terms, as I understand it, except by rate setting, was it?
I think it was, I'll read it just to
All right,
help
so-
out here.
so that's-
To help you out, okay. The Broadband Committee has done most of the specific work on renegotiation, and the latest response was to reject most of our requests on the latest draft. Those requests revolved around issues like expanding the length of hookup between the main line and the house, setting up clear schedules of how much it would cost to hook up at greater length, and other minor details like that. Spectrum turned all those requests down, and we have no negotiating power to force them to do any of that. The one point that we do have total control over, and this is, I think, what you were alluding to, is the amount that we add to the bill as a service tax. This still is only for cable television, not internet service. We're not allowed to negotiate internet service with Spectrum according to federal law. Our last negotiation point said that tax of the 3% in an effort to say lowering the, wait a minute, let me say, Spectrum according to federal. Our last negotiation point said that tax at 3% in an effort to say lowering the tax rate might make Spectrum willing to do more in terms of hooking people up. The town has the ability to tax up to 5%. The board needs to decide what this tax rate should be. But again, I think we need the full board here, and especially Joe, to give more background on it.
Yeah, I didn't even know Spectrum had replied.
Yeah, so probably shouldn't even have brought this up tonight.
It's on our radar.
I did want to get it on your radar, that's correct.
Yeah.
So, does anybody else have any new business or anything else you wish to discuss? If not, I would like to go into executive session.
Are you making the motion?
Yes, and I gotta get my little card out to tell you why. What does it fall under? Ethics issue. I guess it would be number 2, medical, financial credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to said dismissal, removal, promotion, appointment, employment discipline, demotion, or suspension. So,
You moving?
I'm moving.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?